I did 3 internships. I also volunteered in my old school, and I went to do a bit of traveling. So the 3 internships were in quite different areas. So one was within business, one was within the charity sector, and then the last one was actually abroad. So I got to go and intern in Silicon Valley. And so it was all quite different. I got 2 of them through like my networks, the people I knew during my gap year and people who can reach out to. And then another one I got through like a more formal program that I like found online. And I'll link in like similar programs in the description box below. With the volunteering, I always knew that I was very passionate about education and trying to help young people from a similar background to myself. So I did a lot of tutoring for free and also mentoring, so trying to encourage more students who were planning on going to university and give them advice on how to navigate it best. And then when I was in Silicon Valley, I got to travel around the San Francisco Bay Area. So overall, it was quite a varied gap year, but it's definitely something that I really enjoyed. And I definitely say do my gap year was 100% like life-changing.
My gap year was very, very different because I decided to do mine very last minute, post-results day after I missed my offer. I was basically going to go to my insurance, and very last minute I decided, okay, wait, I'm going to take a gap year and reapply to Cambridge. So my gap year was basically planned around reapplying. So luckily I didn't need to retake any exams. So that was something I didn't have to really think about. But that would be something, obviously, if you take a gap year post missing your offer, something to consider. So what I ended up doing was working at this jewelry company from about September to December. So like just the end of 2019. And whilst I was doing that, obviously I was reapplying to Cambridge, looking at other unis just in case I wanted to reapply to somewhere else. After that, I travelled a tiny bit in that period. So I went to Montpellier for 2 weeks and Valencia for a week just before my interview, because I do MML, which is modern and medieval languages. And so I knew that I'd have to speak some Spanish and French in my interviews. So I wanted to make sure that my languages were the strongest that they could be just before my interviews. Just after that, in January, I decided to travel, and I left the week before I found out whether I got into Cambridge or not. And so I went to Madrid first, and I was there for 4 months. Just before I left, I started tutoring online, which I continued and I still do even now, which I honestly really loved. Like I had never tutored before that point, and I just literally love it now. Whilst I was there, I was in a language school, which was, really cool. Like it was just like learning, keeping up my language skills, whilst also being able to have fun, meet loads of new people from all over the world. And then after that, I was in France for 4 months. So I decided to split that between Lyon for 2 months and Montpellier for 2 months. I planned my gap year around setting myself up the best that I could for uni and studying languages. If you're thinking about taking a gap year, you have to consider your subject. In Cambridge, they said that they weren't particularly keen on like scientists, mathematicians or linguists taking gap years, just because they're skills that you need to keep working on. When you're redrafting your personal statement, you kind of have to show them how you're planning on keeping up your skills, or how you're going to use your gap year to better yourself for coming to uni.
I studied geography. For me, my gap year was actually super, super useful because I was actually, I was able to go and see the world. I had more time to go to different lectures. I used to go to lectures in London universities, so like LSE, King's College, Queen Mary, UCL, around geographical topics. And it was quite useful because I got to meet some Cambridge academics and speak to them before I started the course. So you're looking at recommended reading and stuff like that. And then also on my gap year, when I was working, I actually met a woman who did geography at Cambridge, and she was working at my workplace. So I think it's a really, really great opportunity to like network, and also just know more about your subject and become a lot more of like a mature person. And I think even when you compare it from like school, my understanding of geography at school was completely different to my understanding of geography when I was in my gap year, and also my understanding of geography now as I'm like currently studying at university. So it really, really does open up your eyes.
I actually did something very similar to you, Victoria, where when I was in London before I left for traveling, I went to the Instituto Cervantes, which is in London, to do like a Spanish literature course, like extra course thing. And I also did like a French creative writing one. And yeah, so I did literally something similar. I guess that kind of shows like how you're interested in your subject.
So I decided to start doing a gap year in basically October of year 13. I knew someone that I looked up quite a lot to in school, and she did a gap year. So I thought, oh, wow, that's like really, really cool. So I kind of like used her as like a source of inspiration. So I just asked her, you know, what did you do in your gap year? And I just like took advice from then. I always knew I wanted to have half of it organized already before I started, and then the other half I wanted it to be a lot more spontaneous. So the first I would definitely say was going to Silicon Valley and traveling around the San Francisco Bay Area. I am like super interested in African American culture, and so for me it was a really great opportunity to go and meet like African American people, Black American people. And actually when I was working in my workplace, one of my like managers, his work colleague introduced me to his daughter, and she has her own company around like culture and arts. So I pretty much got to follow her to really cool art events in San Francisco for free. And it was really great opportunity to immerse myself within like the culture within San Francisco, but also like Oakland. I got to visit Berkeley, got to see the Golden Gate Bridge. I think that was definitely like one highlight, the traveling, meeting new people. Like I lived in an Airbnb by my like with like a bunch of like random people, but now they're like really good friends of mine, like from across the world. The second thing I would say is the whole networking aspect, meeting new people, changing my aspects in regards to what I can actually do in life. Obviously when you're at school, you're not necessarily told so much about what certain degree subjects can lead to, but then working with people who did a variety of degree subjects is almost like living proof of that. You know, I worked with people who did engineering, people who did maths, people who did history, languages, geography. So it then allowed me to go into university a lot more confident in regards to how I can go about navigating, I guess, the career like sphere. And I had a huge like head start in regards to knowing more about, you know, spring weeks, internships and all that stuff. So I think that was really useful. And then I think the third thing was probably more about being like spontaneous and just doing things that I would never ever think I would do. You're going to like new places that you didn't really think you'd go to. You're speaking to like very different people. And one like I guess like a highlight in regards to that was, so I applied for a bursary for a program called MBCUM, and basically they run leadership development courses in rural Devonshire. So I'm a London girl through and through, so I went to go and live in rural Devon for 1 week, and it was like a really eye-opening experience. Like all the people I was with, a vast majority of them went to Steiner schools, which is like a very interesting model when it comes to education and, you know, schools. And again, like I was with people who I wasn't necessarily be with if I was like at school. So I was definitely expanding my horizons, doing things that I wouldn't necessarily think I would do. Going to university then meant that I was a lot more confident in myself, especially because I had a past experience in doing like more out there things. So I had a bit more confidence in myself to like continue doing that at university.
My first one, I was going to say meeting new people, and honestly meeting such a variety of people, which is so key just for basic kind of communication. Like we're not just used to English people or English way of life, or London people even more specifically. You kind of forget like there are so many different types of people, and it was honestly so nice to meet. I literally met people from Colombia, Russia, Australia, like honestly everywhere. And I have friends now who are like really good friends who literally live on the other side of the world. So I guess, yeah, from that point of view, like meeting new people, I really enjoyed it. And even now, like it's kind of had a lasting impact, because now I'm learning German in my free time. And that kind of sprung from a genuine interest, and like having met people, like spent a lot of time with like Swiss people, for example, and me wanting to, yeah, just because I enjoy learning languages, I was like, yeah, why not do German now? Like, and that's the thing, like before I didn't have an interest in German. Like, I could have chosen it at school, I didn't, because I genuinely didn't have an interest. But then meeting these people has really opened my eyes to like, okay, maybe I want to spend a few weeks in Austria, like, or wherever, and learn some German. Second thing, yeah, you touched on basically being really spontaneous, doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Yeah, I definitely pushed myself out of my boundaries, like flat sharing with, yeah, some Spanish people. I even lived with some host families, so that was a really unique experience. Just each host family I lived with was so different. And then you're just doing crazy things. Even, for example, once it was like 6 a.m. We'd been to a night out. We were eating a kebab, and then we just decided to plan a trip. We didn't sleep. We booked our tickets, just like went home, showered, grabbed a bag, and then next thing we knew, we were kind of like on the coach on to like another city in France. And it was like very crazy. I was very tired, but it was one of the memories that I'm like, yeah, okay, that was the highlights of my gap year, which I couldn't just do now. So yeah, that's having that, I guess, that free time to plan it and shape it exactly how you want, to do exactly what you want when you want. And a final thing, I mean, Madrid, I've fallen in love with Madrid. So I guess in terms of, yeah, my year abroad, I'm pretty like 112% sure that I will be back in Madrid. Just opened my eyes to a lot of things and made me realize a lot of things both about myself and what I want to do or what I don't want to do. And it was just a huge learning process, which I really enjoyed.
Definitely on the learning process aspect, I completely agree. So like I mentioned, I studied geography, but when I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, there were so many different similarities to living in London, especially with gentrification. And so it's just super, super interesting to see how I'm around like 5,000 miles away from London, but there's just so many different geographical processes that are super, super similar, and they almost like parallel and mirror different parts of the world. I think for me that was really, really interesting.
And another thing as well, if you get used to living by yourself or like independently of your parents or not at home, you get very used to just doing stuff like having to do your laundry, having to plan your time yourself, having to do all of that. So then when you get to uni, you're not chucked completely into the deep end. So like you can focus more on, okay, there's like 50 billion essays like to do. Then that's just, you can just focus on that without being like, okay, I've got essays, I've got laundry, I've got this, I've got that. Like it just comes like second nature. It's just like you're used to it.
Just to add on to that, but making friends, because you were so independent on a gap year, and all your friends probably went to uni, although just, they weren't in London or wherever you're from in the world, you became a lot more accustomed to make friends by yourself and create your own friend groups. So by the time you go to uni, just like it's not necessarily new, you're already a lot more confident, in expanding your friendship group.
Maybe like prior to your gap year, like perhaps your only friends are just friends your age, like friends who like similar things, who do similar things, have lived this similar life more or less up until that point. So when you're on your gap year and you're meeting people who are older than you, people who are younger than you, people who have been to gone through a different education system. Like I even remember sometimes in language schools, we'd end up having a discussion about the education system, which, okay, like that could seem on the surface so bland, but that's only bland if everyone's from England and it's the same English system that everyone knows. It's so interesting to see basically getting to know a lot of different people rather than just people of the same level, same interests, same kind of trends, all of that.
So when I was in America, we always had really interesting conversations about Ivy Leagues. And it kind of made me think, I feel quite lucky, even though I am paying quite a lot of money compared to like the USA, like, it's extortionate. You're a lot more like grateful for things in your life, a lot more appreciative of like what you do have, because if you've got that perspective.
It makes you more self-aware because people kind of ask you questions about things or like highlight things that you don't even realize is something different or something unique or interesting. So
my accent.
Yeah, your accent.
People, like you don't think anything about your accent. It's just like, this is my normal like London accent. So, well, then when you go abroad, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, do you know the Queen? It's just like
exactly. Even like London slang, like I'll be saying words and people will be looking at me like, what did she say?
Just getting out of your current like local area, even if it means staying in the same country. So I was going to different places within the UK, like Durham, Newcastle, just outside of London. Even that can be like super, super beneficial in regards to like opening up your mind and meeting really different people.
Yeah, before I left, I'd like visit my friends and see how their uni life was going, because I know that you can experience some FOMO if like everyone on Snap is like Freshers Week, meeting loads of new people, and you're like, I don't know, going to work like at home. You can literally go and visit like for a weekend. Or I think the main thing for me that made me not feel like I was missing out on something was just to plan a lot. Just found lots of things for myself to keep me occupied and to keep me, rather than just sitting on my phone looking at Instagram stories, I would just Google and be like, hey, Madrid, like, can I search for a flat or do whatever, just to take my mind off it.
Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to other people.
And especially, I'd say, if you missed your offer, like that's not something you really plan for. In the back of your mind, okay, like I'm not guaranteed I could miss my offer. It's a possibility. But then I feel like you low-key don't think it would happen to you. Like a lot of shock for like a while after, thinking, okay, like now what do I have to do? And you just have to really think on your feet and think, okay, I'm completely happy going to my insurance, which is completely fine as well. Or be like, okay, I want to take a gap year and like reapply, or just even take a gap year and not necessarily reapply. I feel like even taking a gap year, there's like no negatives to it. Taking a gap year, getting in, great. Taking a gap year, not getting in again, also great, because you would have had a year and experienced things that you would not have experienced if you went straight to uni.
But yes, it's quite important to have like a very optimistic outlook. There definitely can be a lot more pros than cons for doing a gap year. And you don't have to get drunk in Thailand like, for your gap year. You can literally do whatever. Like
around Southeast Asia, like don't worry. Like,
kind of if you want to.
Yeah,
But yeah,
great. The typical gap years. So if you want to do that, Australia, like sure, great. But for me, that was just not something I wanted to do. It's very personal to you. Like it's for you to take control of. And if your gut feeling is saying take a gap year, take a gap year. Obviously, listen to people's advice and do your research and everything. But if people are saying no, 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 like gap year's bad, you'd write a pros and cons list, weigh it up, and think what would be the best for you and your personal journey and development.
yeah. So I think for me, I was quite lucky in the sense that I was close with one of my teachers, one in particular, and then she was really good with when it came to advocating gap years. Also, the kind of school I went to a state school in London. I think they were really good when it came to advertising apprenticeships and gap years. So the first internship I heard about it from my school, but I also heard about it through another website. So it's almost like coincidence, like fate. Like I was going to apply for it. So I think that was useful, knowing that I did have like my teacher, at least one teacher, like back me. I then also had a mentor for a program I was on called Career Ready in sixth form. My mentor, she actually did a gap year after university. To apply for different like law firms, and now she works at one of the top law firms in the country. And so it kind of showed me like, you know, the positives of a gap year, taking some time away from academia, away from education, just think about your life, think about yourself, and just like refocus. Because it's quite easy to think, oh my gosh, I'm in year 13, uni's around the corner, let me just pick a random subject, but you don't really put a lot of thought into it. And then if you do that, you end up going to university. You know, you probably took out the loan for maintenance, for student and the tuition, and then you might not like the subject, or you know, it might not like the university. Why bother having to go through like, you know, that mental strain when you can just take that year out and think about what you want to do? For me, like how to like encourage like my family or like other people who were like naysayers in regards to gap years was literally create like a pros and cons list of, you know, how it will benefit you. For me, one of the biggest pros for doing my gap year was earning money. I think a lot of students from low-income families or working class families tend to kind of shy away from gap years because the stereotype of gap years is very much, you know, people from a certain background. But I think speaking to my friends who are from like, you know, working class backgrounds, they do mention that doing a gap year was so useful for university because they got to save so much money because they were working. When you're on your gap year, you've got so much more time on your hands to like work 9 to 5 and like do different jobs. And like even till this day, like my gap year is, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, one of the best decisions I've ever done. So fundamentally, it's like your life, and you just need to like have the confidence and the conviction to like take your life into your own hands.
If you just make sure that you're like, you've done your research and you know your facts, so that if you're getting grilled, then you know inside out. You know, you could even refer to, for example, Victoria has her own YouTube video about her gap year, which she did with another girl in our uni. If you could show maybe your parents, if they're saying, no, gap year's bad, you can refer to someone like Victoria, like, hey, look, she did this was her gap year, she's thriving now, like, look, it's not a bad thing. Like, so I guess if you've shown that you've researched, come with examples, come with clear reasons, like, don't just say, okay, I want to do a gap year for the sake of doing a gap year. You're going to do nothing but watch Netflix for 6 months. No, of course not. In that case, no, don't bother. You'll learn a lot more at uni. But if you have a few targets or a few things that you definitely want to achieve or do during your gap year, then literally go for it. Reason enough to make someone think maybe, okay, actually, I can see that there are some positives, and I can see is fundamentally, I guess, a good thing. Sometimes you just got to back your own convictions. I get this person's my teacher and they might have authority. However, they don't have authority over your life and your decisions. You're the only one who has that authority. Like, you've got to make your decisions for yourself. It's like a transferable skill. Like, you've taken advice from here, taken information from here, and come to a conclusion. That is literally what you do all the time in like an essay, in a job interview, I don't know.
Literally, there's so many different transferable skills that you do end up learning, not just from planning your gap year and trying to convince people to let you take one, but also when you're on your gap year. So you end up keeping those skills all the way through university. Even small things like when I was interning, I was doing quite a lot of like volunteering work. Until this day, like I still do a lot of volunteering work around education, around social mobility. And I wouldn't have like started it if I didn't do all of those presentations when I was interning on social mobility. So that was almost like a catalyst to lead me to where I am now. But I think just like bring it back, there is still a lot of like demystifying of gap years that still needs to be done. So we really hope that this video, and also the video that I did with my friend Drew, that's like a really, really good example you can like show your family.
Literally speaking to people is so helpful, because if you're not fortunate to have someone or like your best mate doing a gap year at the same time as you, it can be quite difficult and like isolating. You could be just planning something, just planning, no one really to kind of confer with. So I would say, if possible, speak to someone who has been through it or knows what to do. I personally felt like I just didn't know where to go, what to do, what to plan. Like sometimes it can be so difficult. An online website can look so great, like, oh, this deal, this package, this gap year travel, volunteer here. But sometimes just picking one of those random ones just can be quite daunting. So speaking to someone or I guess consulting resources like AIM, you can be like, okay, actually, here are some reputable organizations that won't take all my money and run. Like it's like okay to ask people, even on LinkedIn, like reach out to people.
I wrote an article for a online publication called Black Ballad about my gap year. So again, all the links will be in the description. On Google, just type in gap year ideas, gap year inspiration, gap year videos on YouTube. There's a lot of like resources just about, you finding it. And although initially it might be a bit like, oh, why have I got to find it? Why have I got to like find these things for myself? In the end, you end up building the skill of tenacity, being proactive, and it's something that's a really useful skill that you can need right for the rest of your life.
Make sure that you are organized and stay organized with your gap year research, because it can be quite overwhelming. Like there's so much information, so many resources. So what I did was I got myself a folder with dividers. I organized it as I would a normal school year, like work-wise, and I just made my gap year folder, which I had my Madrid tab, and then I had my France tab, work, like job applications or job offers I wanted to apply to. It doesn't have to be amazing. It made it a lot easier planning everything when I had everything in one place, all my resources together, like a folder, even on just a bookmark folder that just said gap year. So I'd add anything that I came across or any adverts or a YouTube video. And then from that, you can make your pros and cons list, or you can book stuff.
I think the biggest tip that I was given was like the day before, make sure you go to bed early so that if you need to go to school, you can go to school really, really early. Obviously that's a bit different with this year because of COVID, but next year and the year after. So you get the result, you know that you missed it. You're then in school a lot earlier than other students. You can speak to teachers and anyone else within your school who can help you with like making your like next decision. So whether that's going into clearing, you're going to be like one of the first people on the phone, so it's a lot more easier, a lot more like calming as well. Whether that's trying to get in contact with your university about your grades, and whether or not you can, if there's like a leeway, or if you need to like send like a paper to get remarked. Don't stress too much about it, but just like at least have it in the back of your mind. Should it happen, it's not a shock because you already know, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Obviously, some people would have been planning their gap years for months, so I was already planning it in October of year 13 at the start. Definitely, like, take some time to relax and like de-stress. And just like, congratulate yourself. Like sixth form, I found it very, very difficult. Like you've like been through sixth form in college, and then you can like start trying to like plan what your gap year might be. So you might just go and get like a retail job initially, but then once after you've been working for like 1 or 2 months, you then might go and do something else. Like reach out to people like LinkedIn. I'd also recommend doing quite a lot of speculative applications. So pretty briefly, those are applications where you send to firms, charities, organizations, saying that they don't necessarily have any open positions on the website, and they're not necessarily hiring. But you can just say, well, I'm a student, or I just left school. I'm really interested in learning more about these areas. Could I potentially come in for like 1 day or a week to work shadow you? And that's pretty much what I did for one of my internships. I met someone at an event, and I pretty much asked him, like, does your charity do work experience? And he says, not really, but I'll put you in contact with someone. I did an interview with her, 2 interviews. And then I ended up getting the internship, and I was paid London living wage as well. So like I was really, really fortunate. And just like trying to be a lot more like optimistic, trying to find opportunities for yourself, and not really like being too closed off. So of course it's quite easy to be like really, really disheartened, but I think definitely allow yourself to feel that emotion. Like it's okay to feel like those emotions of like, regret or shame or like worry or anxiety. Like feel those emotions, and once you've kind of like feel a little bit better, then you can start planning ahead and start thinking. I think in the grand scheme of things, there's always a silver lining in different situations. Just trying to be like quite optimistic. And then when you're like 20, 30, like 40 years old, you look back, it's like, yeah, that gap year, it was worth it. Like even though I missed my offer, like, it led me to where I need to be now.
I guess, allow yourself to definitely feel those emotions. Like, you will feel a lot of emotions. I remember when I missed my my offer, and I opened up my email from my school being like, I missed my offer, and I was like, like shocked, confused. I was like, is this right? Refresh the page. Like, I was very like okay, I was just a bit shocked. Like, you know, when adrenaline is going, like, I wasn't even sad. I was just shocked, and I was like, okay, this can't be right. Well, I guess it could be right, but I was just like, okay, I wasn't prepared for this, more like. So what I did was I got up quite early. I think I woke up at like 6, and I just got to school as soon as possible, because I had known that if you miss your offer, to get in contact with the college with your breakdown. So I didn't have that. I didn't have my whole mark. So I just went to school and was like, please, can I have my breakdown? And I wanted to see how close I was to the grade that I missed, and I wanted to see whether it was worth getting a remark. In the end, I did like put in for remarks, which they didn't go up. My best friend, she also missed her offer on the same day, and we met at school. Like, we got there at the same time. And we both sat there speaking with our headmaster about like what can we do, what should we do. My French teacher wrote me like a recommendation to my college. Like, that's the kind of things that if you're there early, your teachers won't be like bombarded with like 50 other students to deal with. They can do stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I did. I sent my college my breakdown and the information, and they said, okay, wait 24 hours and we'll let you know. There is a chance you could still be taken with your missed offer. So unfortunately, I was not taken with my offer, and I was really upset. I remember in the moment, I was out for dinner with my friend and trying to take my mind off it. And I just remember that feeling, like my heart sank. I just gave myself a few days to just be sad and be disappointed, because I felt like I disappointed other people, disappointed myself. I was just really upset. It's normal, it's natural to be disappointed and upset, and when you have a goal, if you don't achieve your goal, that's completely normal. But then pick yourself up and be like, hey, I'm going to put this sad energy into like planning my gap year, or like searching stuff about my insurance that I may not have searched about, or like applying for accommodation in my insurance that like the deadlines come quite quickly. Email who you need to email, speak to who you need to speak to. And yeah, if you just prepare yourself from a few days before, like Victoria said, if you have the college's email already saved as a contact, so you can just forward them your grade breakdown, or have their phone number so you can call their admissions office. Try not to be too harsh on yourself. You would have worked so hard. There'll be so many positive things that came before the fact that you got an offer. Like, and just because you miss your offer, that does not say anything about your character. You haven't disappointed anybody. Like, I know you feel like, okay, maybe I let down my family. I don't think anyone's family would be like disappointed. They'd be more like wanting to support you, or even support network in general. Definitely lean on them as like much as possible.
Yeah, this is all like character building, resilience, the ability to be optimistic in difficult times, which is all really, really useful skills like as you get older and like enter the workplace or end up working for yourself. There's like a really interesting quote that's said by like Les Brown, who's like a motivational speaker. It doesn't matter how many times you fall, but if you do end up falling, make sure you fall on your back, so at least you're able to look up to the sky and still get up. So just about being resilient and getting back up. That's life. Like, there's always going to be ups and there's always going to be downs. But it's just about accepting both.
If you're getting your papers remarked, don't just wait, and don't wait till they come back. Still be proactive. Still plan either to go to your insurance, or plan a gap year, or apply for some jobs, something like that. Because my best friend her remarks ended up going up. However, they were later than a certain deadline. Her original college took her, but she had to take a gap year. She ended up having to apply for jobs and like find work, and decides, okay, I'm going to go to Madrid for a month or do whatever. So don't just sit on your hands and wait. At least start to think about, okay, gap years and opportunities. Start doing, I guess, all the things we've said, like research and watching YouTube videos. And to be honest, take some time to actually enjoy yourself for a few weeks. Take some time to actually relax and be like, oh, results day has come and now I can chill. Do something nice. Like, I quite like decorating a room, so I was buying fairy lights, a bin, like all this random stuff from like IKEA, Wilko, anywhere.
And then just like one last thing, so we talked about resources. There's a YouTuber called Ibsmo who did a gap year, and he speaks about his gap year. I think he's done like a video on it, which is like a useful video to watch.
So I definitely, AIM is so good for that. Like, we've literally put all the resources together. So we hope that we've been really, really useful and answered all your questions about gap years.
Any useful resources will all be in the description, like down below, or like AIM will like disperse them. And definitely I recommend like you show this video to any of your like friends, family, teachers, if they're kind of like against you doing a gap year, and hopefully this video will convince them and like give them an insight more into gap years and how they can be super, super positive and almost like life changing.
Definitely. Like, it was one of the best years of my life, not to be cliche or cheesy, but it was honestly amazing. So yeah, good luck. And remember, if you miss your offer, like try and be positive and just get planning your gap year.